Hello, good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing? I'm doing well, thank you. So this evening, obviously, we have a water forum. Thank you all for coming out in attendance. I do see some familiar faces to some of the other town manager forums I've held, but I'll just briefly talk about how I operate town manager forums, just so we're aware. Typically, when I have a town manager forum, I like to try to be as brief as possible in providing updates. I want to give opportunities for questions and answers. But tonight is a little bit different. I have a presentation that will be do a presentation first. Then we'll get to questions and answers. The presentation will be pretty brief. Typically I'm by myself, but I do have a team with me. I'll introduce that team real briefly. So we have Helen Gordon, who's a principal from Apex. We have Bill Young, who's our water superintendent. We have Azu Aitaniro, who's our DPW director. We also have Council President Murphy here with us this evening, because I imagine some questions might be better directed to the council. We have Lori Guarini, who's our finance director, and obviously Trish Shropshire, who's our new assistant town manager. Did I pronounce the last name wrong? All right, Shropshire. Sometimes I get the last names wrong. So that's the introductions. We'll go through a presentation real briefly, but I do also want to acknowledge our council here. I believe all of them are in attendance except one who had a conflict there. So I do want to acknowledge them, and I want to acknowledge you all. So I'm going to get right into it and do the presentation. So as I mentioned before, I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible. This is sort of a variation of the presentation that I gave. We try to multitask here. We are recording. All right. I like to walk around a little bit. So this is sort of a variation of a presentation that we gave to the council a little bit earlier, but what the focus is on where we were, where we are, where we're going. Once again, trying to be a little bit brief here. Let's turn this on. This fires up. I'll just move this going on here. So a little brief history about where we were. So right now in this time period, historically the town has relied on a well, it's called Well 10B. This is one that I'm sure a lot of people have heard about. It was treated, yet it was unfiltered. And when I mention unfiltered, it's unfiltered for iron and manganese. But essentially we use that well to address water demands in the system. So in periods like this, high demand, we would turn Well 10B on, so tank storage levels would drop. You have high demand, high weather, water temperatures, so I think naturally people expect more showers. People are using water to water their lawns, wash their cars, fill their pools. So what the town historically did was they would turn Well 10B on. And Well 10B is not 10A, so Well 10B on. And so they would do that to address demand, but also fill their water tanks. But because iron and manganese was unfiltered, this well was the source of many of our discolored water complaints, okay? I'm gonna show you a chart here that shows how often we were doing this. So Well 10B, and this is a chart from 2015, I'll take particular note of 2015 to 2025. So that 10-year period, we've been activating that well over 50% of the time. So once again, that well was treated, but was not filtered for iron and manganese. Once again, if you look at this, I've got a pointer here, so I'll activate it. Pretty typically, you see, we were activating in high demand periods. So you would see that, hey, in the summer, particularly June, July, August, when you had your high demands, we'd activate that because our water tanks were dropping low to meet demand, fill our water tanks. What I would say is that, obviously, I'm gonna talk a little bit longer than this. I came on board in July of 2025. So very soon thereafter, we did have to activate Well 10B in September and October. So when I came on board, one of the first things I said was, what's the issue? All right, I want to understand what the issue is. Why are we doing this? And then ultimately, I want to fix it. And I think in collaboration with our counselors, we were committed, let's fix it, let's address this. And I think as some people will probably remember is, I said during this period that I'm going to do everything that I can in conjunction with my team not to activate 10B. What are some solutions to seeing that happen? And we were committed to that, and if you notice from this time on, November, December, this is the only year to this point we haven't activated 10B. So once again, just to illustrate, we've been doing this every year, but when I know people are concerned about our water tank levels and different things like that, this is not unique to this period for town. For 10 years, we've been doing the same process. What is unique is we haven't activated 10B because we're so very close on the work, the significant work that we've done to build a new treatment plant that I'll talk about, treatment facility that I'll talk about. But I want to address one of the concerns that we're running out of water, the town's going to lose water within a day in our tanks. That's not true. One, when I did make a commitment, I'm going to do everything that I can and our team can to not turn 10B on, but I did say publicly, I said, I have to protect the town. So we will activate 10B if we need to for fire protection services. We collaborate very frequently with our Chief Slats and obviously our water team. We haven't had to. Now, I'll be honest, our water tanks, are they exactly where we want them to be? No. And there's a lot of work that we need to do to make sure that is the case. But we're not running out of water, and if we were, I would activate 10B, as I said. Okay? So talking a little bit further about where we were. So the town hasn't had an annual flushing program in place, although it's recommended that we flush our water mains at least twice a year. Wells have been running very consistently for a long time. They haven't had a chance to rest, which is pretty significant and important when you have wells operating. And then when you combine that with a drought, a severe drought that has been multi-years, that's where you have reduced well performance. Our wells aren't performing as well as their capacity allows them to because of those conditions. And then to be very frank, little has been done to expand our water capacity during these past decade, and I could probably say decades, and we haven't invested enough in our town infrastructure. Where we are, as I mentioned before, had a mission to curb our reliance on 10B. So what did we do? We set up an interconnection with Town of Middleborough. We appreciate their collaboration. They've been good partners. We established that interconnection in January. By the way, I didn't mention this before, but it was on that chart. 10B, because this is another bit of misinformation, we have not turned 10B on since October of 2025. If the town ever did that, we would make sure we noticed you about that. But it has been offline since then. So one, establishing interconnection was important for me and this team, knowing, hey, having added water supply will help us navigate not turning 10B on. So that's been in place since January, and we've obviously had communication with Middleborough, and Council President probably will address this a little bit later, but we do intend to seek an extension to that interconnection in July. For some more information for people who aren't aware, we're operating under a water emergency. This is a town petitioned water emergency. We petitioned Mass DEP in December for this water emergency. We petitioned them again in June for extension, a 6-month extension. And then throughout the past 6 months, we've been operating that we're not allowing any new water tie-ins for prior approved projects during this water emergency. I think there'll be some questions about moratoriums and different things like that. Once again, that's probably we've mentioned before, that's a discussion item for the council, and Council President Murphy can address some of the challenges and some of the rationale in not pursuing moratoriums at this time just yet. Talk about some of the work we've done during this period. So between January to currently, we've redeveloped wells 3, 5, and 6. We've performed routine maintenance on wells 5 and 8. We've replaced the motor and the pump on well 9 and the pump on well 5. We did what we said we were going to do. We were going to flush our water main so we can clear sediment and resolve some of those discolored water complaints. As people remember, when we activated 10B, that's when we had a lot of complaints about discolored water. We've significantly reduced those complaints because of flushing our system, and not activating 10B, which, because it was untreated for iron manganese, led to more discolored water. So that's part of the reason why we didn't want to activate that. We applied for and secured a $2 million grant to help offset the costs associated with the Plymouth Street project. And then ultimately, during that period, we determined the best path forward for bringing wells 10A and 10B online. As many people are aware, there was a plan a while ago to construct mains to the High Street treatment plant. And so what we did, we pivoted. We pivoted because we, wanted to be cognizant of short term, but long term as well. So at High Street, it doesn't treat for PFAS. And so with this plan, not only are we addressing iron manganese, we're addressing PFAS as well. One of the questions that was submitted in advance that I'm sure people ask, when are our timelines on when we expect this project to be completed? So the iron and manganese phase We're anticipating that to be mid-July for that to be completed. And then the PFAS phase of that project, late summer. So we're thinking around late August, early September. Where we're going. So one, finish construction of this treatment facility. That's really important. Once again, it's going to add 10A, which we have not introduced to our system. Introduce 10B, will be filtered and treated. We'll continue the work that we've been doing so far, advocating for additional financial resources for the town. That's important because that mitigates the costs on the user base. There's a lot of work that we need to do. It's going to take time. It's going to take a significant amount of money. And so in an enterprise system, users pay for those costs directly. So obviously, the more grants and the more earmarks that we get, we can mitigate the costs on our users. But we have a lot of work to do regarding that. I've had conversations with our state leadership team, from the governor's team, our Representative Gallagher, Senator Driscoll. We've had meetings in collaboration. We've submitted earmarks at the state level as well as the federal level with our congressional delegation, as well as Senator Markey and Senator Warren. And then continue on that, we're going to explore adding to our water capacity. As I mentioned before, we haven't really done a significant amount of work adding to our water capacity. We've got to add to our water capacity. So that includes the development of our Vernon Street wells that we have available to us, and exploring additional future water supplies for the future. So now just a quick closing message, and then we can get to some questions. Is what does success look like? What are our outcomes? What are we trying to deliver here? And I think the council, one, we've had a water update on our council meetings, I think, since December. For every meeting, we've had multiple forums. One, we want to make sure people know we're committed to providing safe and reliable drinking water. That's an absolute priority. We're going to make sure we invest in the infrastructure appropriately. We haven't done that for a long time, and we need to do that, both for water quality purposes and water capacity purposes. We need to increase public confidence in our system. That's work that we can do on some of these forums. We've tried to establish a new water dashboard on our website, getting some feedback from residents and trying to give as much information that we can. Ensure we have long-term system resilience. So once again, not only addressing issue today, but tomorrow. Because a lot of communities, and I think all of us are aware of the news, a lot of communities are struggling with water infrastructure challenges. That's part of the reason why the American Recovery Act was initially implemented, was to allow for investment in water and wastewater infrastructure, because a lot of communities have neglected that. So Bridgewater is not in this alone. A lot of communities are navigating that. So I want you to hear directly from me. You know, I understand the frustration. I understand that some people feel like we're not moving as quickly as possible. I do have, you know, our water consultant, and we've had another consultant say, hey, we haven't seen a lot of communities move as quickly to get a treatment facility of this size and scope done as quickly. Months, not years, months. We're very close to establishing that. But I understand water is a crucial part of daily life. So I understand the frustration, but we have made significant progress during that period. And so there's still important work that remains. It's going to take a bit of time. It's going to take a significant amount of resources. But we're going to do that work. That's our commitment. I know this is the commitment of the council, and this is the commitment of myself and our team. And we'll continue to look at long-term solutions and making sure we provide for a resilient future for our community. So that's the PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to open up to questions. So one, I appreciate that you have all taken the time to come here in person. So I'm going to navigate questions from the audience, as well as questions that were submitted by residents in advance. This meeting is being recorded, so we are going to be able to put that online. So what I will ask, if you have a question, why don't you come up to the mic, just say your name and address, and I will serve sort of as a moderator, and we'll figure out who's the best person to address a question from you all, okay? And we'll change from those in attendance as well as those submitted, okay? Sound good? Questions from the audience first. If anyone has a question, why don't you come up? If not, I will go to our street and start asking questions.
How you doing? My name's Steve LaBelle. I own property at 292 Bedford Street. What my question is very simple. Are we telling the sewer and water department not to sign off on building permits currently?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, we are not, and we've been operating for the past 6 months, I think since December, since we had a water emergency, that for projects that haven't been prior approved, we're not allowing any new water tie-ins to our system. And that's, obviously a discussion for the council for anything further than that. I think one of the questions is about a moratorium and different things like that. I'll have Council President Murphy speak to that. But in terms of how we're operating, we're not allowing any water tie-ins to
What
the
about
system.
sewer?
Sewer has its own capacity issues as well. It has to be in a zoo. Why don't you help me with this? It has to be in a designated area. Why don't you help answer that question? You want to press your mic?
Sorry about that. Currently, we give priority to sewer needs areas, meaning areas where with our comprehensive wastewater management that was approved by the DEP, we will give a priority to the areas where, for example, a couple years ago, the areas of North Street, where there's high groundwater table, bad soils, we'll give sewer to those first. And if you have a residential frontage, we will give sewer to existing houses that are in needs areas. That is the order of priority.
So I have not seen any official notice posted about an issue with sewer. In fact, as far as water goes, the only thing that I've seen is no outside watering. So I guess my question is directly, at 292 Bedford Street, am I going to be allowed to tie in to septic or sewer?
You probably, not for water. Right now, we have not established a moratorium language with the council for their review on sewer. But definitely water, they are looking at that. So we have to take a look at 292 Bedford Street and look at the size of sewer main on that, and then we'll make a determination based on that.
Okay, because I can't get a straight answer out of your sewer superintendent, or your, I can't even get the price for a tie-in, and I feel like he's just avoiding the question. And secondly, I do have a signed water permit, and the town cashed my check. So I would like to know, how are you going to handle this? Because you're holding up a building project that is costing me substantial amount of money. This may not be the correct forum, but it's the only choice I have, considering the town manager doesn't return phone calls, emails, or drop-ins. You, Azu, are impossible to track down, and Craig from the water department avoids me like from the sewer department avoids me like the plague. So this is the only opportunity that I have, and I'm glad that it's in a public forum, because the town needs to know that how you're treating people in town. I've been here 24 years. I've paid a ton of taxes. I own a few parcels of land in this town, and I pay a substantial tax base. And for people to avoid me is ludicrous.
So I think we'll take some more questions. What I would say is this: you've had 2 direct conversations with me where I think we've been very clear
We've
about.
had one direct conversation, and
I
I
will
left there, you having your assistant say that you were going to call me back. You've had emails from me that you haven't
finished what I
returned.
was going to say. We had a conversation. You came into my office. I told you directly how the town was navigating, and nothing has changed from that conversation, sir.
So I don't think the town wants to spend money on legal fees, but I don't see any other choice.
Do you have a question?
Mike Demos, 35 Caltip Drive. Many questions I have. So I'm not going to ask them all at once because I don't want to take all the time. I'll come back if we have enough time. I'm hoping this meeting goes more than 1 hour because there are a lot of questions and concerns that residents here want straightforward answers. So I just want to touch on general water levels, supply and demand, Mr. Town Manager. And if you have to go through the DPW director, that's fine as well, too. What is our current water demand, and what is our current supply?
Bill?
Gallons per day, round up numbers.
That's a loaded question. It depends on the weather. It depends on a number of factors. Is it summertime? Is it wintertime?
I'm talking about over the last 30 days.
So on the last 3 days, we did.
30 days,
30 days?
yes.
Okay. So in the last 30 days, we are averaging roughly 1.5 to 1.7 million
Gallons per day,
gallons per day.
that's the demand.
That's the demand.
And that's including Middleborough's water supply?
That is including Middleborough's water supply.
Is that over 2.2, 2.3 million gallons per day?
No.
So that's the supply you're saying, or the demand?
That is the demand, yes.
And what's the supply?
The supply is 1.5 to 1.6 million, depending on if we can get more water or less water from Middleborough.
So the capacity, so you have roughly about, I'm just using basic math here, because where the tank levels are so low, something doesn't add up, with all due respect, Mr. Young. All right, so you're saying that our supply, I want to make sure I understand you correctly, is 1.7, and I'm rounding,
The demand is 1.7
I'm sorry, demand is
million.
1.7, and the supply is,
Yep. 1.5 to 1.6, depending on the day.
and then, and does that include Middleborough,
The demand or the supply?
or the supply?
The supply is, yes, the supply is 1.6 million to 1.5 to 1.6 million, depending on how much we get from Middleborough.
So let me add a little clarity in that.
So-
And so I think it's important for people to understand this. In terms of the supply, the amount of water that we get from Middleborough fluctuates on their demand, their system as well. So there may be periods of time where they're able to give us a little bit more water, or sometimes they give us a little bit less water. We've had times, we send out a notice, the 311 notice, reverse 911 notice about how demand was high during that period. A lot of communities did that. Middleborough's demand was significantly high, so they had to dial us back in terms of water the town receives. There's times where they're able to give us a little bit more. So that fluctuation in that reflects those tanks going up and down.
Yeah, and both of those facilities have to go through multiple backwash cycles per week, which also limits the amount of water that we pull out of the ground.
So what does supply look like without the Middleborough connection?
1.2 million,
Significant shortfall.
yes.
Okay, so are we at, I'm getting mixed reports here, I saw your PowerPoint slide, that you are, Mr. Town Manager, going to ask Middleborough for an extension after July 12th?
Yes, we will. We will ask them. I'm going to go back to this slide a little bit here again. So obviously the 1.2 million supply that we mentioned there, what the town has typically done, like I said, during periods like this is when they would activate 10B to get that supply up. So we're obviously, and 10B, when we've had activated, it is more of a water supply than we are getting from Middleborough. So if you did get more of that water supply, then the water tanks wouldn't be lowering. They would actually be either maintaining, or during periods like this, you could add to the water tanks. Like, for example, these past few days, our water tanks actually have increased.
And just to go off of what Justin said, when we were running 10B, when I first arrived here, we were getting a 250,000 gallons a minute, or 250,000 gallons a day out of 10B alone. That's how we were fighting our supply. Like I said, is we have days where we put water in the tanks, and there's days we don't put water in the
Okay,
tanks.
so what I'm trying to get at with all these numbers here is that I know the town manager is boasting or saying that progress has been made in 2026 where 10B is not active this late in the season. But we're missing the fact that we're on a water emergency supply, and we're also receiving up to, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, 400,000 gallons per day from Middleborough on certain days.
350,000.
That's significant, right?
Yes.
That's telling us we have a significant shortfall. And my
Yes.
next question would be, Middleborough's not going to provide us with water indefinitely, maybe until October, what I'm hearing, hopefully more, because we don't have an additional water supply. So what's the plan going forward in terms of, I don't see anything coming before the council in front of the public for additional water supplies being discussed. I hear general discussions being discussed with Brockton, but I hear, and I see a gentleman that's been, I'm very grateful for, many of us here, Lincoln Andrews, for trying to help us and offer an option that, and I'm not an engineer, but to my understanding, that whole area is surrounded by water. It's right next to the connection of Route 18. And with all due respect, Mr. Town Manager, and I talked to you about this on December 23rd when you're meeting with residents. You didn't seem interested back then, and you don't seem interested now. And the clock's ticking here, and without the Middleborough water supply, you can put 10A and 10B on. We have a significant problem here that's being ignored. So what are the options coming forward? Nothing's been done or said
I can take
in
those up.
specifics where we don't know. We're left in the dark, and all due respect to the council, their questions aren't being answered directly.
I think we can tackle this in a couple of ways. One, I would disagree with your statement that back in December I seemed disinterested or I'm disinterested now. I think there's a lot of conversation. Once again, I'll have Council President Murphy talk a little bit regarding that.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
No, let me finish what I was going to say, sir. What I would say is that I think I acknowledged, and I think we can have Helen acknowledge, how long of a process acquiring property and getting a well online is. So that's one thing. I think I did acknowledge that's a long process. But we have talked about additional well development. We've talked about Vernon Street well. We've talked about this several times with the council. I know you mentioned Brockton and the Aquaria desalinization plant. We've talked about that publicly as well. I understand that many residents can't show up to every town council meeting. I'm not expecting them to do that. But we have talked about those things. And those are the things that we're actively looking at. Those are the things that were mentioned as part of my presentation. Bill, you want to add something there? And then Helen, will you help me with the how long?
Just partially on what's been going on is we have done a lot of work. When you do well maintenance and do redevelopment, that well has to come offline for a significant amount of time. That's why we needed the Middleborough interconnection. We were using the Middleborough interconnection to help us help ourselves by trying to do these redevelopments.
Okay, with all due respect, you didn't answer the question. You didn't answer the question. What options are in front of the council right now? We're entering our 7th month in this water supply emergency. We've heard general discussions are being discussed for Brockton. What does that mean? That should be a full discussion amongst the council. It does not in any way belong in executive session. You're not compromising the leverage of the town by talking contract terms and price and all that. That should be a full discussion in front of the council. And what's going on with Lincoln Andrews, with all due respect, Mr. Town Manager, we should be so much further along whether we're going to do it or not. And you're still having discussions with them. And what I'm getting out of reports from others and what I've seen in town council meetings, you're giving him the runaround.
Okay.
So I want an answer to that. You guys, you didn't answer the question.
I think we have answered that question. Maybe you don't like how we've responded to that question, but we have answered it. The attorney has mentioned about,
So
in
what
terms
is
of
the status
Brockton,
with Lincoln Andrews'
in terms of
land?
Brockton IMA and how that process will work, the council is very well apprised of that process. And if the council were to move forward with it, that would be a public discussion. The Vernon Street wells is another avenue, but do you want to address the conversations with Mr. Andrews?
Yeah, I do. So thank you, Mr. Demos, for asking the question. I know from my standpoint, I won't speak for the town council. I don't feel like I'm in a position to speak for every councilor, but I personally kept an open line of communication with Mr. Andrews and have been speaking with him pretty regularly about this opportunity. In fact, we've even pushed it to the point where his attorneys are meeting with some of the town staff to discuss the options. But let me be very clear about something, and Mr. Andrews is here. No offer has been presented to the town council for any land at the moment. No formal offer has come forward. And so until it does, the town council cannot act on that. But I've kept that open line of communication with Mr. Andrews, and I've been straight with him, and I hope he'll speak to that tonight as well, too.
Is it because the no offers coming forward because the town council and the town manager is not dealing with them directly with a sense of urgency?
I mean, I'm not going to speak for Mr. Andrews. I don't know. I think that
mean,
question's better.
I'm reading body languages and I've seen previous comments, and it seems like this is a man that personally as a resident, I'm very grateful for him offering this option for us to consider. And seeing this gentleman get up here and in multiple meetings, public meetings, expressing his frustration that he's trying to knock on the door, but no one's really given an effort or sense of urgency to do something. That's concerning, Mr. President. And we're 7 months in this water emergency, and we want answers, and we want action, and we don't want sound bites. That's what we want. And let me just say one thing about the supply, Bill. Even with Middleborough's water supply up to 350,000 gallons per day, that's what you said, correct? A public notice went out on the website at the beginning of May stating that a majority of our streets were flushed. No, I'm sorry, I'm going to say, quote, a significant part of Bridgewater was flushed. do you call 19 streets significant? And do you think that's misinformation to the public? And do you think that's transparency and trust within the community that we can believe the town manager and the DPW, what you're telling us? So explain to me, yes or no, is 19 streets considered significant? Because that's what the public notice went out.
No, and we would have loved to do the whole town. Part of those 19 streets, there's also a lot of streets off of those that we pulled off of. In order to do a unidirectional flushing, you have to pull past the street to pull down the side streets. So in that part of the process, that's what we were doing and trying to move so. When we had a discussion in May with the town council, it was a determination that we wanted to try and start to conserve water where our tank levels were. At that time, we were also going for the renewal of the interconnection with Middleborough. So we were trying to balance the act and see how we were going to be able to operate.
But you would say that the reason why you couldn't do the entire town, which hasn't been done in 2020, which is astounding, is that you didn't have enough water with Middleborough's connection, 350,000 gallons.
We were also
day.
in the process of doing redevelopments at that time.
But you would say that that's not a significant part of the town.
No,
That's a
that
misinformation.
was the
That's
problem.
misleading information. Would you say that?
I would not say that.
I think one thing we would add to that is when we did that flushing in the town, once again, we were predicated initially about discolored water. And we wanted to make sure we were addressing the discolored water complaints that we had, which obviously I think we have seen that we've had significantly reduced that. So we were really focusing that flushing to address that complaint directly, and we feel like we did address that. But also during that time, we were going for the potential extension of that interconnection, and also we wanted to make sure we protect ourselves and preserved our water tank levels. Okay.
All right,
So
and
I
then-
think I am going to probably I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask another question, but I do want to answer some questions that we've got submitted from here and allow some other residents
Just
the
one more
opportunity.
question,
Yeah.
Mr. Town Manager.
Yep.
Since we talked about Mr. Andrews' option, I saw a recent town council meeting. I read emails that was revealed through a FOIA request that we're a lot closer to a Brockton agreement being arranged by you and the CFO of Brockton. One email on March 19th where it indicates that it's not a general discussion going on. It's nearing a final agreement. And then there was another email that was released on April 29th, I believe, 2026, and where the CFO wrote back to you saying he's sending it to the city solicitor for review. To me, Mr. Town Manager, that's nearing completion without full discussion on the council or knowledge of the public what's going on. Now, whether I'm for Brockton or not, that's not for me to say. But that's disturbing. That's not transparency. That's not collaboration that what you advocate for. So where are we at with Brockton? Do we have an agreement?
Yeah.
And why isn't the council, the public?
I
been
appreciate
informed
that
of
question.
this?
One, I disagree with you in that it's not collaboration and transparency, because most of my counselors are here, and I can attest, and they've all publicly attested, that I've told them and I've kept them notified of that process. And I've made a commitment that I said I would deliver that to the council, I would let them review that information, and they're ultimately going to make that decision. I've said that publicly, I've said that individually to them as well. So where we're at with Brockton is we absolutely, as part of, one of the things that this council did as well is they passed a resolution encouraging me to look at all alternative water sources. This is one of those things that I will present to the council and they can make a determination on. So I have had conversations with the community of Brockton regarding that desalinization plant. I mentioned at a town council meeting. One, councilors are well aware, we're actually arranging tours, if we were to go there, tours so they can see that plant directly. But also, if we do get an IMA, there is no signed IMA agreement, or I think you were implying that. That isn't the case. That would be shared with the council. And that's what I said publicly, that's what I said with them all individually, and I think they all can attest to that.
But if it's going to the city solicitor, wouldn't you think that that's just going to the city attorney to dot the i's and cross the t's and have a desired outcome come before the council with no options like Mr.
That's
Andrews'
part of
land?
that's part of the process of developing IMA. You're going to have your legal team draft that, and that's a draft. And then obviously you'll have a discussion off of those, because I'll represent for Bridgewater, for example. If we were going to pursue an IMA, I would want my legal team to draft the IMA, be a draft, present that to the other community for consideration and discussion. Okay?
So through you, Mr. President, were you aware and the council aware of how far along this arrangement was being made?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
So
and-
I'm going to get to some of these questions now, because we got to give other people opportunities to ask some questions.
Justin, if I could ask one question, Mr. Demos, and just respectfully, I haven't had the opportunity to talk to you directly. One of the things that frustrates me as a counselor and as a citizen, and you sat in the seat as a council person and a select board member. Why wasn't Bridgewater on the forefront of seeking additional water supply when you were in these seats, or even prior to? And I'm not looking for an applause or to catch you. I'm curious.
I'm sorry, President Murphy, I didn't hear why wasn't?
Why hasn't Bridgewater been seeking additional water supply for decades? Why did we wait until it's gotten to this point?
Well, you got to remember, and I'm a lifelong resident, that water's always been an issue. But when I was there, that wells 10A and 10B was a significant step forward. And I'm going back to 2007, in the mid-2000s. I had no control of wetland protection areas being infringed upon by a berm by a nearby company, or the Conservation Commission's drop ball and holding up the standards of what needs to be done with well protection. And at that time also, Mr. Murphy, all due respect, we were dealing with a financial crisis where the town was on the brink of insolvency. So our efforts as a council, as a board of selectmen, was making the difficult decisions to move this town forward and address those concerns, and we fixed it. And that had taken a lot of our time. And it wasn't at this point. I'll tell you one thing. All the colleagues I served with on the council and the board of selectmen, and even on the advisory board, if we were in this position of water supply emergency, I'm going to tell you right now, it would be much further along than what's going on right now. The transparency, the straightforward answers would have been provided. And I'll tell you, I'm a little disappointed with the answers I received today, because it's still not clear. It's a lot of spin up there.
But Mr. Demos, I've asked to meet with you personally and share that and have those conversations.
No, you wanted to meet with me over the budget last year,
And what did you
which
say?
you assured me that you wouldn't use one-time revenues, and you went and catered to the new town manager and went ahead with one-time revenues.
And what
last
did you
July.
say to
There was
my
no
meeting?
reason to meet at that point. After you told me, and you broke that insurance, that you were going to live within the spending limits. So
Guys,
that
I'm
was
gonna-
not about water. Mr.
I'm going to
Murphy.
try to get this
Facts,
back on track here. I'm going to ask to have some questions that were submitted, and then if anyone else has any questions, please come to the front. Azu, help.
Can we continue with the, question and answers before we go to that?
I want to do one here, and then I will get you next, sir. Let me do one here, because I want to be cognizant of people submitting this. Azu, I wanted to ask your help or a response to this. One of the questions that was submitted was, I would like to know what the outcome of the CONCOM review, Conservation Commission, when we say CONCOM, of the well 10B. Have decisions been made or work being done based on Conservation Commission recommendations? Are they still reviewing?
So we had filed an application with Conservation for
Finance next.
what is called a request for determination of applicability. We did receive a positive determination, but also an emergency authorization from the commission because of the nature of the emergency of our water supply. But they did request, because of the information that they received publicly concerning wetlands being filled in the area where we're proposing to install the lagoon for the backwashing of the treatment, water supply treatment. We went out there with the conservation agent, as well as the contractors, myself, for an entire day. We dug 3 test pits to a depth of 35 feet, 25 to 35 feet, and it was all pure natural sand. We also dug 3 soil borings to a depth of 45 feet with a split sampling, which means you drop one auger and you put some samples. And no evidence in that area or within the immediate jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission that there was actually any wetlands alteration. Now, that does not speak to the BRS property that is on abutting land use. So where we went with conservation was to establish that we could do the lagoon work as part of the emergency work that we're doing with the emergency certification with DEP as well as DCAM. So we are moving forward, and we will be filing an after-the-fact notice of intent to document the work that we've done.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name's Eric Ringette. I live on Vinnie Circle, on that east side of town. I'm just, it's hard for me to, this is not my usual forum, this is tough for me, but the lack of communication on what's happening here is so frustrating. It's just so frustrating. Councilor Murphy, I think you're, Murphy, is it? Sorry. I think you're from what I've been reading, you're doing the work, but putting it back on whoever was talking up here for the previous years, that's horrible. That's not the best way to go. Not the best look, in my opinion. When it started off, we talked to, I don't know names here, I'm sorry, Superintendent of Water. The math wasn't mathing. It just wasn't. If the demand is up to 1.8 and the supply is possibly up to 1.6 or 1.7, we're in a deficit. That's 100,000 gallons a day, right? So, and I know it's not every day and it fluctuates and all this, but over the course of months, we're not gaining. We're not gaining on the tower, right? So every effort should now be made to keep that line open to Middleborough. I see emails and communications from FOIA requests that say, Justin, that you have said to Middleborough, we're all set for now. And if anything changes, we'll let you know. That's not what you just communicated now. There's the breakdown. We don't trust any of you.
No.
That's the problem. How can we believe what you're saying when we see these different examples of you saying the exact opposite up here? It makes no sense to me.
Let me
Help me understand.
I will help you address. So, when that email, for example, that FOIA request came in, one, I obviously want to communicate with our partners. But I think what people, once again, I'm not expecting everyone to watch every meeting or be apprised of every discussion that occurs. But the last time we went to Middleborough for extension, they made it very clear to us at that meeting, which a lot of councilors were there, that they weren't looking to extend the interconnection beyond this additional 3 months. So we clearly heard them. And so we've had to navigate saying we're not going to have that extension available to us. So one, our team and everyone has had to plan that we're not going to have continue that extension. So I wanted to respond to that email and said, at the moment, that's what the plan is. We're not going to do to seek an extension. But I immediately said I wanted to talk with the council president, because without a doubt, if that community was at all interested in doing an extension, which they weren't when we went there before, then it made absolute sense to have that extension available to us. That's immediately what I communicated to the council president. I said we should meet with them, and the council president can attest to what that conversation was. I support it, our team supports it, but naturally, when we went there that second time, they made it very clear, their town manager, everyone there, that they weren't going to extend it. So what is our job? We have to plan for that. We're not going to plan for extension. But then immediately, once again, wanted to have outreach, see if they were willing to extend. If they were willing to extend, we absolutely would take them on that offer. That's why you heard that tonight. And I think Council President Murphy, once again, can attest to that conversation.
I hear you, but that's not what we're seeing. That's not the communications we see in the email. So what there's the difference in talking what you're saying now and what we're seeing in the emails is completely different. So that's the disconnect. Now hold on a second.
Yeah.
So now you're saying that you are open to that. Are you going to the meeting on July 6th or 7th in Middleborough? Who's going to that meeting here?
We can address it.
You're all going? Is the water department superintendent going and the DPW going? Because they may have direct questions for you that will depend on their answer. They'll have direct questions as to what you're doing for town permits and other things like that as to how they're going to answer. I think you all need to be present. Are you going, Superintendent of Water?
So sir,
Can you all raise your hands as to who's going, who's not, so we know?
sir,
Murphy, you are?
I'm going,
Okay.
and I would prefer to speak on behalf of the town, and I've already told the town manager that.
Okay.
That's my decision.
If they have specific questions, though, for like water figures over time and all the rest, would it not be better to have our water superintendent there?
Yeah, I'm going to answer the questions to the best of my ability, and if they have future questions, I would direct them to the town manager. I don't think it's helpful to have staff there that evening.
So when they have direct questions and you don't have an answer, they just might go, well, we're done, because they're really not in it for the long haul. That's, I think, what, they could very well easily take that position,
So
right?
what I would say is, we've gone to Middleborough twice. The initial interconnection, and then when we asked for an extension. Both of those times, all of us, counselors, but myself, communicated with their town manager, communicated with their water superintendent. We're going to do exactly the same thing. Try to be collaborative, work with them, give them all the information they need. A lot of
So
that.
make
Let me
those
just
people
finish-
available.
Let me just finish the thing. We were available those first 2 meetings. We were available. And so we'll obviously have a conversation with the council president and how we want to approach this next meeting. But in addition to that, which maybe people weren't aware, not only did we have meetings with their staff before, but I wrote a memo that clearly outlined what we were doing, what we were looking for, et cetera. That would be no different what we're doing going for extension.
Well, it would be
But
different
obvious-
if-
But obviously, talking with the council president
Yeah.
and our council.
But it would be
decide what's the
different
best
if you all showed up, right? I know that from reading the Middleborough's minutes, they're in a little bit of a financial crisis over there. They need money, and they're charging us over and above on the water. So that's an out for them to get more money for their town. I mean, that's something that we should be, trying to keep this interconnection going. Because, I mean, granted, I love the updates on the filtering, and that's going to help get that well active and get us possibly back to making some of that difference in what we're getting from Middleborough now. But if we keep Middleborough open, that's just, we can then maybe fill the tank more.
That's exactly the strategy.
So, right, like that would be important. That's a good thing, and I think you should all show up for that. That's one thing.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, a couple of questions, if I may, sorry.
Yeah.
So, I understand that you said that no more projects are going to be approved because of the water problem. Can somebody tell me why the Friendlies project was approved? If, I believe Apex gave a report that said that it cannot support more water. The demand is just not, we can't support that demand. Why was the Friendlies project approved?
No. So I think we've talked about this a few times. This is a good question. So one of the things that we were trying to navigate, and I think the simple thing to say there is the council hasn't implemented a moratorium at all. All right. Once again, I'll defer to the council president. I know each individual councilor needs to speak to that, and this is probably a forum for councilors as a whole to speak to it, but I'll have council president give, I guess, his perspective. So the town manager can't unilaterally put a moratorium in place. Not doing that, haven't done that. But what we said, trying to navigate this.
We would back you to do that. We want you to do that.
I understand, but that's not what the charter allows. We work as a town manager and council form of government. That's a council decision. And so I've been very public about that, and I've outlined what we're doing during that period. One of the things that we have worked collaboratively, because what the council is trying to navigate is the loss potentially of grants and different things associated with the work that we need to do. Remember what I mentioned before, we're trying to offset the cost of this work for residents. And so what they've been trying to do is trying to navigate not losing those grants. And so we understood that, and so what we said at that period, look, we're operating in a water emergency. We can't allow any new tie-ins for non-approved projects because, one, it doesn't make sense to do that under a water emergency. But obviously, without a moratorium in place for any pre-approved projects, and this is what Broad Street, that Friendlies project, was a pre-approved project.
No, it was not. That report came in before you approved.
No.
The dates showed from the FOIA requests that you knew it could not support the demand, and it was still approved. Why was it approved?
No. Let's clear this up because that's a
please do,
little bit
yes.
of misinformation. So that project was actually passed under the form-based code. And so that project received a planning board recommendation in May, but it ultimately received, under the form-based code, the CED department gave development site plan process approval in June of 2025. So technically, under the premise of what we were operating, that was already a pre-approved project. That impact study that you referenced, that impact study came after the project was approved from the CED. That's a fact. We asked, and the developer wanted that water impact study. Helen, can you give a little verification of that time frame for us? Because I think that water impact study came December or something like that. Do you remember? Excuse me? February 13th. It came after the fact of the,
When was it conducted?
yeah, Helen, you want to help with that one? Do you remember, when did we put, when did,
I'd have to,
Yeah.
I'd have to actually look at the letter to say, to determine the exact date. If you say
I think
the
the most-
letter is February, then the letter is February, and that would mean it would have been conducted within, depending on how busy we were, a 4-week period it took
Yeah.
us to do that analysis.
one of the things that was important, and it's very clear, and I think this is something that the town, including counselors and myself, have addressed as an issue that we had in the past. And once again, I'm not going to say I can't litigate the decisions that my predecessors have made. That's not what I'm here. I'm focused on addressing issues moving forward. And so one of the things with this project is that project received CD approval in June without that water impact study. That is something that this council and myself are actively looking at rectifying, because there is an ordinance, for example, that says that projects moving forward will have water impact studies before that. We're also working with the planning board in conjunction with our fellow councilors about changing the form-based code to return the option for the planning board to give approval on projects.
So, yeah, I don't know the nomenclature here. You
Yeah.
said CD
Community Economic Development
approval.
Department.
Is that the same thing as a permit? Like, that's issuing him a permit to do the work?
Yeah, so it's a little nuanced in the sense that how we've operated is if a project received prior approval, which it did under the form-based code, CD department approved that project, then what we've been operating, because we don't have a moratorium in place, that we would approve those projects moving forward. Now, that is a challenge, and once again, I did mention that this council is aware of that, and there's different things that they're talking about that maybe Paul can speak to, or the council as a whole in a council meeting, but we don't have a
Do you
moratorium
know,
in place.
yeah, it's just so frustrating to have the water problems we have.
Yeah.
Driving by that Friendly's place and seeing them use the hose to just fill up the cement mixer to keep, like, it's just so frustrating. I can't explain. Well,
Yeah.
that's fine. It is, you've answered that question. In regards to Mr. Andrews' offer, which in reading on the comments online, I'm very appreciative for his interest and his willingness to continue this effort. And I was here for my very first council meeting last Tuesday, and I was just, it's hard for me to digest, not being able to do this with our council. It's very frustrating. But I noticed you were kind of careful with the way you described your communication with him. You first said you haven't had any communication with him with any offer, and then some discussion was made, and then you were quick to chime in again and say that it was no discussion of a donated piece of land. So you are saying you've had communications with him.
Yes.
Why is it broken down? Why isn't that really at the forefront? Like, because it's land, it's water and land in this town, why is that not the focus? Can somebody tell me that?
I would say water has definitely been a focus along with our budget.
No, but
Water is
the-
definitely-
taking it from our town.
I'm going to answer your question.
Yeah.
Just give me a second.
Yeah.
It's important to touch base on. Water is absolutely important. That's a clear, critical issue that we've talked about every single council meeting. And so there is interest. We need to meet with Mr. Andrews' team a little bit further. I will acknowledge on our end, in terms of counselors and different things like that, when we've interacted with Mr. Andrews, he wants us to talk with his attorneys. Sometimes he individually talks with counselors, and we've been trying to navigate that. We have a new council president. We're meeting with his team. We want to understand exactly what is being offered and be very clear. So one, we can be transparent, not only with the council, but the community as well. That's really important. So it is a priority for us. And I think Councilor Murphy can attest to that. That's why there's been open dialogue with Mr. Andrews' team.
Well, that needs to be communicated more to us as to those discussions and how far along you are, because from the last meeting that I was just at, it seemed like that was just a dead end point. It was just over. And now that we hear that the interconnection or some sort of connection with Brockton is filtering up the top and becoming this offer that may get pushed to the forefront, it's just kind of like, I don't know, what am I to think about whose offer is more important? In my opinion, it should be his. That's all.
One thing that I think is important, once again, is taking the advantage of this opportunity to, one, be transparent, but understand what some of the challenges are. Anything with our water infrastructure system is going to take us a decent amount of time. It's going to take quite a bit of time and a bit of money. there aren't a lot of communities that have been able to operate getting a new treatment facility soon operational in so quick amount of time. So we've worked with Mass DEP to expedite the work that we were doing at 10A and 10B. They've made it very clear, for example, we've talked about we need to get an enclosure for it. They wouldn't allow us to expedite that under the water emergency. We've talked about the Vernon Street wells and that development. They have indicated that they will do whatever they can to help us move forward as aggressively as possible, but that probably won't move as quickly as 10A, 10B. Where I think, Helen, where you might be helpful, talk to us about what development may look like for an existing well, but also a well that hasn't sort of been developed or explored just yet. Can you give us a little bit of information regarding that? Yeah, vacant land.
Sorry?
You want to turn your mic on? So tell me a little bit about a well that has already sort of been developed. Give me an example, Vernon Street. We'll use Vernon Street.
Yes.
Give me a general time frame of that, but also give a general time frame on land that hasn't had that process undergone so
Right.
far. Thanks.
So Vernon Street wells, as some of you know, we already have an approval from Mass DEP to utilize them as a water supply. In order to do that, there's a process that needs to be followed, and it goes through a period of testing, of permitting with both local permits and Mass DEP permits, and then preparation of plans and specs and construction. And in the municipal space, construction has to go through a bidding process. So a process from beginning to end for a well that's already been approved for an amount of water to be withdrawn from would be in the vicinity of starting up a treatment facility in 2031, from start to finish, because of the process it takes to get that going. If we were talking about a brand-new public water supply, you have to go through another step, which is to get the withdrawal permit. So if we were to identify a location where there was a well supply, the first question is, does the town own the property? And if the town doesn't own the property, what it would take to get that and how long it would take for that process to occur and that legal process to occur. And then once that happens, you'd be doing, in unison with that, some additional, some immediate testing to confirm the quality of that water and if it was a potential for use. And then you would start the same process as you would have once the withdrawal permit was approved. So again, that's probably adding another year or so to the process. So if it's a well that we haven't received a withdrawal permit for, we'd be adding about a year or so to that process. So now you're talking about 2032. And I think, if I might just add one comment, we're looking at all those as options because they're all moving targets, and that's if you get a yes at every step of the way. So you don't want to just go down one avenue. Looking at Vernon Street is one of the things that the town's looking at. Looking at Brockton is one of the things the town's looking at. And looking at potential private wells to become public is something. So you want to be looking at more than one option at this point.
Thank you. All right, the next question we'll have is, why hasn't a water moratorium and new building project moratorium been implemented as requested by residents?
Happy to take this one on a council standpoint. I know that, again, I'm not going to speak for individual councilors, but the council itself has been working in the past 3 years to be MBTA communities compliant. And the reason why we've done so with that is because our understanding is that our grants from the state are tied to that being compliant. We've received, I think, and Ms. Guarini can correct me, just over $8 million in grants over the past year from the state. That's money that's necessary, especially in our budget climate right now. And so we as a council, and we've had this conversation regularly in public, I've had individual conversation with members of the town. That's something that is ongoing, and we will continue to explore, and we will continue to have a conversation about. But to forfeit that grant money, I believe as an individual counselor, would be devastating to our town. And so it's unfortunate that that is the legislation. It's unfortunate that, we have to comply. I think councilors have been pretty open about that. But to forfeit that $8 million, or in some cases, I believe we were even at $23 million during COVID in state grant funding, would be devastating to our town. And so that's something that we've been trying to navigate almost on a weekly basis. I believe a conversation is had about it. And again, we will continue to explore it in the future as well, too.
One thing that I would add to what the council president said, at least for us as organizationally, what we've been navigating as well is obviously petitioning on behalf of the town. One, those grants are very important. I think we all realize that we are operating in a reduced budget capacity. We don't have enough revenue. We've heard some of the angst about budgeting and funding for the next fiscal year. So one, we got to be as aggressive as possible trying to get these grants. However, we're obviously going to do what we can to protect the community as well. So part of that advocacy has been working with some of our team, Representative Gallagher, Senator Driscoll, talking with the administration. I've talked with the Lieutenant Governor, giving her appraisal of our situation in Bridgewater. We've met with the Executive Office of Livable Communities, which directly had grants tied to not having building moratoria or restrictions in place. They recently just changed the language on that. For 2+ years, 3 years, Lori, but 2 years, I know at a minimum, that language is very clear, transparent for everyone. You are ineligible for these grants that we've applied for our infrastructure if you have a building moratorium or any restriction in place that restricts housing development more than 5%. They recently just changed that language, and one, I think is part of our advocacy, right? We've been telling people what Bridgewater is going through, because it seems a dichotomy to me. We're a community that has been compliant with MBTA. We're doing everything we can, but we need funding for our infrastructure. We can't continue to build if we don't have the infrastructure in place. So that's what we're advocating with them on. And so we've been having conversations about that. They changed the language about that on a case-by-case basis. Communities will be, their applications for these grants will be evaluated. So we're advocating, we're fighting, and I know the counselors have been grappling with that decision as well. So I think that addresses that question.
Jean DiBattista, 260 Lakeside Drive. I'm seeing, and I think you're hearing, a lot of frustration on the part of residents. And I realized recently that I was feeling that way too, and I did submit a number of questions. Several counselors answered those questions, and that enabled me to see that there is some real progress being made with what the town is trying to do with our water. But more than that, it also helped me to realize that we need to work together to solve this problem. And although I feel immensely frustrated, as do most of you, with everything that's happened, I do believe that our town manager and our town councilors are trying to work and help us to find a solution to these problems. And we have many different points of views on this. We all have things that we care about. So there's some people in the town that care about the library. There's many of us that care about the budget. And there's many of us that care about water, because water is a very, very basic need. But I know that there's been a ton of frustration on both sides. There's a lot of information that has come out via Facebook. Some of it's been excellent information. People have done an excellent job in getting to the facts and the truth and helping, I think, everyone understand how serious this problem is. I think that we need to continue to work together, but we need the town council to truly understand this is our top priority from a citizen standpoint, that there is nothing else that we care more about at this time. That doesn't mean that we're not caring about the other issues in town or that we aren't concerned about them, but this is number one, okay? That's the first thing I want to say. Secondly, I also want to say that there are, some questions that we all have. You just attempted to answer the question on the water moratorium. I don't feel that is a complete answer, I'm being honest with you. I do believe that our community, and I think this is the reason for a particular project's approval, needs to comply with the MTA Act, or whatever it is, that act that we all have to comply with. I do think that's the case. Other towns have been sued when they haven't complied with that act, and also we may or may not be able to get grant money, but we can't take that risk. So that project has to go through. As frustrating as it may be for all of us, there is a very good reasons from a town perspective to have that project go through. But I think we could exclude that project and still create a water moratorium or use MJ's proposed Water Act, in order to have a moratorium which outlines that exclusion. There's no reason that we can't proceed with a water moratorium and possibly a building moratorium for any project that's going to significantly impact the town's water, with that as an exclusion. So, I've written many procedures. I've worked with legal teams as part of my professional career, and I know that you can do that type of thing. So there is no reason for us not to be proceeding with a water moratorium from my perspective. I think it's very clear that that's what the citizens want, and I would like to see that act move forward. Now, if there's other legal reasons and other reasons that the town doesn't want to proceed with that, that is something for the town attorney to review and help us to understand, and then we need clear communication. But it's very clear to me that this is top, this is number one, and that we need to solve this problem. We need to work together. And I found myself getting very frustrated, and I started to see that happening in the communications I was having with various people in the town. And then I realized I needed to pull back and realize that we all need to work together on this. We all need to try to find these solutions together and look at ways that we can help and improve the situation. So that's what I have to say. I would really like to see the water moratorium put in place. But at the same time, if there's clear reasons, as long as we can exclude the MBTA, need to comply with those specific acts at a state level, I don't see why we can't do it. So I don't know if you have any comments, but that's why I'm up here.
Well, Jean, thank you for those comments. I will just briefly say, one, I can understand the frustration. I appreciate the advocacy about this issue. I think it's very clear that all of us understand that water is the number one priority. And we definitely, as my team, I can speak for us, it's definitely been a number one priority, along with the budget, obviously, because that's important. But water is a priority. I know the councilors can't speak for themselves this evening, but I think they will talk about this at a following council meeting. There have been different councilors who have submitted various different acts, and I appreciate Councilor Spergone has introduced a piece of legislation. There have been several councilors who have submitted pieces of legislation that we're actively trying to navigate. That's what I can say. But I do want them to speak for themselves, and I think at a forthcoming council meeting, we can talk about it further.
Okay.
Okay?
Just one other thing, because I don't want to take too much time either. But there's also been, we have these water impact reports, but we don't have a clear procedure. I know one is being worked on. It needs to be completed. It needs to be a priority, and it needs to be completed, because what's happening right now is we're getting in these statements with nobody taking responsibility for what we do. The CED is not taking responsibility as far as I can tell. They don't consider it to be in their purview. So they're going to continue to approve projects without, as long as we don't have a procedure which says very clearly that once these water impact statements are completed, there's someone's evaluating how that's going to impact Bridgewater's water, and also that there's somebody who is going to make a decision related to those projects, and that the developers understand and understand that they're going to go through this process, that they may not be able to connect to our water, and that there isn't frustration on their side or our side as it relates to, like we had the individual in the beginning talking, you know, basically that we understand when we're going to approve connections, when we're not, and it's clear, and we have a procedure in place, we know who's responsible, and we know where those decisions are going to be made, because right now, we don't have that. I guess there's one more thing.
Let me answer this one real
All right.
quickly, because I think it's important to address this. That's one of the things that I did identify as a weakness that we had in place before, that we didn't have any rules or regulations in place for water impact studies. One, I think our DPW director had mentioned issues regarding that, but there were changes implemented when I came on board. But what I did identify, and what I want people to know, is I agree with what you just said. I know this council does as well. One of the things that we're working on is water rules and regulations. They need to be clear, concise. Anyone doing business in Bridgewater should be able to go to the water rules and regulations and understand how we're operating, how we're moving forward. Not only for a business, but our planning board, our staff, and our team. That's something that we're going to do while I'm here. That's something we're actively going to do. However, what I will just say, the reason why we haven't moved as quickly regarding that is, one, a fluid, dynamic situation. I really need to focus on getting 10A and 10B live, and because how we've been operating during this period, that we're not allowing any new tie-ins for water, for not prior approved projects, we're not allowing projects to move forward right now. But that absolutely will be in place at some point. We're working on that. And my hope, I'm going to use this as a plug, we have a water and sewer board. I also established a water advisory committee. How I envision this working out is, one, we develop those rules and regulations, but we have them vetted by our colleagues as a collaborative approach, not only the council, but those members who serve in their advisory roles in our team. But we will implement those rules and regulations.
Okay.
Okay.
I have one more comment, and sorry I'm taking more time than I expected, but my last comment is there was a recent increase in water rates for commercial users. I don't think that went far enough. We're charging, I think at the top level, is it 10 cubic feet per, something like that. Anyway, Middleborough's doing 13. We need to pay for all this improvements that we have. And the problem that's been created here is because of large state and large commercial use of our water, in my opinion. I would love to see a report on where our water is going for all these entities. I think there was one at some point. But the thing is that I do think we need to charge a higher rate to the large commercial users. And I think we really need to use that opportunity. These are the people that are making a profit off of the town. We need to now say, and I'm not talking about little businesses. I'm not talking about the smoothie shop or, a restaurant or anything like that, but these large commercial users that there's thousands of additional connections to our water as a result of their projects. Those people need to pay more. And they need to start, basically giving back to the town what they've taken from it. And that's it. Thank you. And you can respond to that if you want.
Yeah, and I'll briefly say, and I'll take another question here, and then I'll take a question that was previously submitted, is that the town recently, last year, July or around that period, the town recently changed how they were charging water users. We implemented a tier structure that essentially shifted the burden, or not the burden, but shifted cost to higher tier users. So by implementing those changes, which the council did, the average user of water and I want to be very clear about this because one resident, when we said this, said, well, my bill is still going up. Well, the budget is still going up. Expenses are still going up. But by the change that the council implemented, the average user is paying 7% less than what they would have under the old rate structure. And the higher tier users are using more. But what I will say is this. We brought Raftellus, which is a private firm, to come in and evaluate that. They do that for a lot of communities. One of the things that I've challenged them on is the higher tier users. We have to balance equity and different things like that, but we are looking at that. I know the council is looking at that as well, but they're doing it every year too, because this is a dynamic, fluid situation. So Raftellus will be back again next year to advise us on those water rates. In the meantime, we're also working with them to look at our connection fees, because people that are tying into our system, if we're moving forward on those things, they need to be paying more. They need to be investing in their infrastructure. They can't just come in and use and then have those costs offset by the users that are already in place. So that's work that we're actively doing with them as well. Okay.
Excellent.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hi, ma'am.
Hi. Christine Smith, Gadsby Drive. First off, I wanted to say, none of us take lightly what all of you are facing. We appreciate the hard work that you're putting into this, but you also have to take a moment to understand where we're coming from, because we are putting our faith in you as our leaders to get us where we need to be and get us what we need. And with all due respect, some of the comments and replies that I hear to people seem somewhat condescending, and I think that will fuel fire and why people are upset. With that being said, though, I too have questioned the water moratorium, and I understand, Dr. Murphy, that there are restrictions in place and things, but the one thing that I want to say is I don't jump to make conclusions. I read everything. I like to learn. I make my own decisions. And one thing that I see very regularly are two things being asked, or rather one being asked, one being told. The one thing that's being told is people saying, we don't want more hookups. I get there are legal ramifications to that, but I think you really need to dive in and be more explanative to people as to why we aren't doing that and can't, besides just blaming it on a rule by the state. Because when I heard that, my first reaction was, well, let's just go to the state and tell the governor, listen, our residents don't want this because we can't afford it. I'm sorry, but I work my butt off to pay for water that I can't drink. So yes, I'm mad, I'm upset. And I think that's how a lot of people are feeling, and we're just not feeling like we're getting those answers. And I know that you're giving explanations and beautiful PowerPoint presentations, but one question that I see asked all the time, and it seems to me like a really insignificant question in the grand scheme of things, but everybody wants to know, who checked the box? And we can't get that for an answer. And that is where frustration comes, because when we can't get one simple answer, how can we have so much faith in a huge, monstrous problem? And coupled on that, I have another question, and that is, these restrictions are in place, that's fantastic. I do my part. I'm not watering anything outside. I'm counting on days like today that don't happen very often. But I look out 2 weeks ago and I see my neighbor's brother show up and pull her hose out and start washing his car right in the middle of the driveway. And then last week, it's a hot day, she pulls the hose out, big stand sprinkler spraying all over her yard, and her kids are running under the sprinkler and having a great time. And I'm like, well, that's great, but my annuals are all dead and wilted in my garden because I won't do it. I'm doing my part. And when that was communicated to the town, well, nothing happened. Nobody came and told her, you're not supposed to be watering. Who's enforcing this? We see a blinking sign in the center. There's a blinking sign on 104 by the fire station. But people are driving and hopefully paying attention to the road. So they're not going to read the sign. And if they do read the sign, they're probably either going to forget or not bother to go and look it up on the website and see what it's all about. So what do we have
Yep.
to enforce this? I mean, because other than me being involved and online and coming to these meetings, I don't hear anything about saving water.
So you asked a few questions. One, Bill, I'm gonna help.
I did.
I'll have you help with this a little bit. So in terms of the last question about enforcing water restrictions, the town actually has a sprinkler patrol that we've been doing. Our staff goes out in the morning and in the evenings to look at sprinkler patrol. We have allocated some fines regarding that, but we spend more significantly in overtime for our employees to do sprinkler patrol. But I'll have Bill speak to it, because what we have noticed is a lot of residents haven't notified that they're on a private well. We actually just had a department head meeting with our health agent about more residents realizing they have to register. Well, Bill,
Well,
let us
One
respond.
moment, please,
Yeah.
because I do want to add to what you're about to ask.
Yeah.
I did my due diligence. My neighbor doesn't have a well, but I also lived on that road when my house was the only house, and there was no perkable land, but, oh, wait a minute, all of a sudden, there's 3 more houses on that land, and I watched them be built. They do not have wells, and that I know for a fact. And then I reported it to the town, but the sprinkler patrol didn't come by and tell her that she couldn't be watering. Give me a pad and paper, I'll do it for free.
Bill, speak to that a little bit, and then we'll go from there.
Well, for starters, our sprinkler patrol goes out early in the morning and after work, sometimes later at night, depending on what the week is, how we're working the week. But part of what they do is they coordinate with our office. If they see a sprinkler violation, or if they see somebody watering with a sprinkler, they take note of it, they bring it back to our office. We cross-examine with the list that Justin was talking about with the Department of Health, and checking if it is a private well or if it's not if it's a public, on the public water supply. At that point, if they determine it's on the public water supply, they've been ordered to issue fines. We would go first offense, second offense, and third offense.
Okay, but I just told you, I know that this person doesn't have a private.
So, ma'am, what I would say specifically to that project, why don't you send an email to our water team over there, and we'll take a look at that.
Yeah.
Did.
You did?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we'll take a look at it.
Okay. We can look further into it.
Okay, so how about the other questions? You
Yep.
did note I had several.
Yeah, so one, you had mentioned a little bit more explanation about why we can't do this. We had talked about this at a council meeting as well. Once again, I think we'll elaborate a little further. There is the notion of litigation as well. That was even brought up at this meeting here, that the simplest way I could explain, let's say we're building a property. You got approval from the planning board to move forward with your project. And let's say it's a $700,000 home or so forth. You spend $200,000 towards building that home. And then you come to the town expecting to move that project forward, but then we say no. Obviously, you wouldn't be too pleased about that. And one of the mechanisms you might utilize available to you is legal. And so that has been discussed. That is something else that the council has been grappling with. I think that's something that we've talked transparently. That is something else a reason why that this council would have that consideration on why they might not move forward with a moratorium. Once again, I don't want to speak for them, but I did want to take an opportunity to address that other issue that hasn't been raised.
I appreciate that sentiment, but the way I see it is you're either facing legal issues by the businesses not being able to build, or you're going to face legal issues by the town not having water to drink.
Yeah.
I mean, you're looking at it no matter what. And, I think people just aren't feeling seen or heard to the level that they need to be. I mean, I just stood over there for 20 minutes and had to push my way to the center just to be acknowledged that I was standing waiting to speak. But I was trying to be respectful of the fact that you were alternating between people at home that couldn't be here. That doesn't help me feel seen when I have to shove my face in front of the microphone to get a chance to speak. So I get that you guys are under a lot of pressure. I'm not taking that away from you, but I'm just trying to ask for a little more understanding of what your residents are asking for. Put it all out there, because we'd rather too much information and be able to say, well, at least my council is 100% honest and upfront with me, and I have no lingering questions, even if it's not what we want to hear. Because like I raised my daughter, life isn't always sunshine and roses. Sometimes you have to take the bad to get back to the good. I think we're all willing to do that, but we just don't feel like we're getting all of the bad that goes along with what you're saying is the good.
I appreciate that feedback, because that is feedback, and I think we can acknowledge that we're looking at other alternatives and avenues to communicate. Once again, saying that we're not expecting every resident to go to town council meetings or come to every forum. People work. They're not able to watch all those meetings. We're trying to find ways to improve our transparency, our collaboration, our communication. That's what started with the water dashboard. That's why we're having these forums. So I take your feedback. It is acknowledged. I can understand the frustration. I think that's what I started off with. I can understand the frustration. Also, I think one of the other items you mentioned is this notion about who checked the box. And so I want to specifically address that. We have addressed this at a council meeting before as well too. And I'll be very clear about this. Our building commissioner came before the council and talked about how building permits are issued. And so I'll reiterate kind of what he said. They'll come into the building commissioner, and then it gets delegated to every respective department. So you have water, you have sewer, you have CD, fire, and so forth. And so water is one of them. We have a water superintendent. The water superintendent has to sign off on a project. And I think, as I mentioned before, when we address this thing, Azu also raised his hand because the water superintendent reports directly to the DPW director. And we said during that period, as we acknowledged, we're operating that. We're allowing prior pre-approved projects to move forward unless there's a moratorium in place by the council. We're very clear about that. Very clear about that. So the notion about who checked the box, we've said it, and I wanted people to hear specifically. It goes to these various departments. The water superintendent, just like the sewer superintendent, has to sign off. Okay? Your question, and then I'm going to get a question from here.
Sure thing. Erin Lewis, 535 Auburn. Sorry.
I think you're fine right now.
You guys can hear me? All right. I appreciate all the effort you guys have put into all of this. And in the spirit of transparency, how many of those open grandfathered in projects exist?
That's a great question that I don't have off the top of my head. We have said in the our building commissioner at another council meeting specifically went through all those projects and outlined them. That's something that we can put on our website to follow. We have that exactly. I don't have that information in front of me right now, but there were quite a few, and that's something that we've been trying to navigate with this council. If you want a direct response to you, my staff is here. Leave your contact information. I will put that on our website, the information that our building commissioner did, but I want to get your response. I don't have it on with me today.
With all due respect, I'm not the first person that's asked that. I just haven't heard an answer, and I don't know if I had missed it.
Yeah, we publicly addressed that at a council meeting. We definitely did, but I will make sure we put it on our website on the water dashboard.
Thank you. That would be helpful.
You're welcome. I'm going to go to a question from the sheet, and then if other people have questions, yeah. And if people have questions, I know it was mentioned you have to get to the front, just come to the mic. That's what the mic is for, and I'm going to try to alternate as best as possible. We're still going. I'm committed to trying to answer as many questions as possible, so we're still going. And I will give a notice if we're running on time, okay? I said I was going to go to a question here, and then I'll go to you. Blah, blah, blah. Bill, I've heard rumors of possible leaks. Do we have leaks somewhere? How does the town check for leaks? Is there a leak in 10B and why we haven't been able to turn 10B on?
So to start with the leak at 10B, that's part of the pressure testing. When you put in new pipe, you have to do what's called a pressure test. You boost the pipe up to a certain pressure to understand what its capability is. At that point, you will determine if there's a leak or not. Our crews went in over the course of the weekend to make that repair, so we can move forward with the project and also have the redundancy in case we did have to emergency activate well 10. On the other side of things, on the distribution side, there are leaks in the system. There's leaks after the meter. There's leaks in people's toilets. There's leaks in the road. We combat that with a lot of different ways. The police and fire department are always on the roads 24/7. That's how we usually get notified of main breaks. They usually will call in one of our staff, and that's how they determine it. They see it in the road and they say something. Residents do the same thing as well, which is very helpful and part of being a community. We also have WaterScope. We can't monitor WaterScope 24/7 as a staff. We have limited operational capacities, but when we do have a chance to look at WaterScope and see a leak detection above 4 or 5 gallons a minute, we immediately act on it. When we see smaller leaks, we start to send letters and everything, and we start to try and determine and make contact with the owner to make those leak corrections. So it is a threefold, fourfold type of thing. Is there's everybody involved, and the more people involved, the better. The more water we can conserve.
One of the things I would add to that, that's why we have some pamphlets here about water scope. You and the community are helpful in that as well. Water scope allows you to directly see your usage. And obviously you can identify sometimes, well, my bill is a little bit higher or my usage is a little bit higher. That's what water scope affords you. So one, I'm gonna encourage residents to sign up for that. We have some pamphlet, some information there, but it's also on our website, et cetera. The other thing, just to add to that, 10B can be turned on. I think I mentioned it before. We're trying to navigate. We're so very close to, especially addressing the iron manganese component of it. We're trying to navigate not turning it on. But I want to be very clear because that was some misinformation there. We can turn 10B on. I think Bill addressed, the pressure testing process. And also, in addition to police and fire, we have representatives of our highway department here. We're very proactive about that too. A lot of people, we really talk about not being on our phones, looking around, being proactive, understanding, hey, if we see a sprinkler, if we see water in the road, let's be responsive to that. Let's communicate with water. So we try to be as proactive on our end as well, too. You, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. I have a collection of questions on different issues. The first one is the dashboard. On there, on the very bottom, it says... Oh, sorry. Thank you. My name is John Norris, 1297 Vernon Street. I also own a business here in Bridgewater. For the dashboard, if you go down to the bottom, it says, is the drinking water drinkable? And the answer says that we meet all federal and state regulations for our drinking water. Is that an accurate statement? Yes. If we turn 10B back on, will that remain to be an accurate statement?
Under the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, yes, we will be over the 20 nanograms per liter, but that is not enforceable until 2031.
Okay, then at the time that happens, would the dashboard be updated in order to provide for people, especially pregnant women and children,
Yep.
that the drinking water is no longer advisable for them to drink or cook with?
Yes, that is something that we actually had a conversation with Jim McLaughlin last week, and that's part of the procedures and what my job is to do. And if we do have to make that determination, is as soon as that water goes on, we do have to notify the public for both manganese and for PFAS.
In addition to that, it's not only just putting it on our website. There's a notification system that we would do. And our commitment, by the way, is that's another element of what we have on this pamphlet is the town has been operating on a reverse 911 system where it goes through Plymouth County. We want to encourage people to sign up for direct reports from Bridgewater, from the town of Bridgewater. So we would directly communicate to that to the public as well. Not just our website, but reverse 311, social media, and the notification requirements that are required by Mass DEP.
Perfect. I was only concerned because people are being turned to the dashboard to get updates and information, and that's the last time that was updated was 24 days ago. So I was just concerned that if it did get turned on because of some sort of drought that we might be in, like right now, that people would have inaccurate information. I just want to go over the numbers with you real quick. I'm not going to linger on this. Our demand and supply are roughly the same, as is, right now, for water. We are relying on Middleborough for anywhere between 300,000 and 400,000 gallons per day.
Between 250 and 350,000, yes.
Yeah, I'm just ballparking. The last communication that I was aware of, and maybe I missed this because I went off to the bathroom, was we did send communications to them stating that we did not want to continue on the connection. Did we send a follow-on saying we wanted to stay on the connection?
Yes. So I think I addressed that with the council president. Remember, my initial response, I had to respond, is we've been operating as if they didn't want to pursue an extension. That's what was communicated to us by their team when we met there and their team there. So one, we've been navigating that way. Our team has been navigating that way. But I spoke with the council president. If there was an opportunity that position had changed, we definitely want to explore that. So that communication has occurred.
Did we communicate to Middleborough that we're interested in continuing on that connection?
Mr.
Yes.
Norris, I actually called Councilwoman Farley in Middleborough, and I did express that directly to her.
Perfect. My question is, if they don't continue on with their connection, we lose the roughly 300,000 gallons per day. That would put us at a shortfall. 10B is not due to have iron manganese treated until July, which is good news. It's good that it's coming back online. So thank you for working on that. But it's not due to be treated for PFAS until August or September. If we turn 10B on, but we lose the Middleborough connection, are we still going to be in a deficit?
On a day-to-day basis, it depends on the water usage. We also have the ability to turn well 10A on. That's something that we haven't been able to do in the past 10 years. So we're actually talking about a 215,000 gallon swing of what we used to get out of well 10B, which we were looking to get with Middleborough to supplement having to turn well 10B on. The good caveat of that is 10A is also behind it. We have another 300,000 behind that. So when we drop out the Middleborough interconnection, we actually are maintaining our capacity once the Plymouth Street wells come online, because we're talking about having 2 wells operating instead of the 1 or the interconnection.
And what I would add to that was not only would we be maintaining it, what I think Bill was saying, 10B would be maintaining that, but we would actually be adding to that by adding 10A. Because as you see on that chart, we have not used 10A before, but now we have the capability to use 10A.
Okay. So 10A's water is quality enough to actually bring online?
Yes, along with the 10B, and once it goes through the filters and PFAS, eventually, yes.
So then both of those would still be available July and then August? August at the earliest, September at the latest for the PFAS treatment?
We're gonna, as I said before, we're trying to navigate not turning those on until we have the filtration in place. I think just being very transparent, we would love to continue with Middleborough. We're very interested in that opportunity, so we'll talk with them about it. But once again, if there isn't that capability to do there, we're gonna make sure that our water tanks have enough water in them, and if we have to activate 10B, well, we would do that.
Speaking about the water tanks, at their current level, can we maintain if a fire was to break out? Do we have a sufficient amount? I think Apex actually gave us a report that stated we need a certain amount of capacity in our tanks currently on hand for our firefighters to be armed with what they need in order to fight a fire. Do we currently have that?
Currently, we do, under the ISO and fire regulations that you're talking about in the Apex article. We also have the great thing with the fire chief and communication is we have the tanker task force that we are able to deploy, that he's able to deploy if needed. Obviously, we'll want to use our initial attack using the town water as it's readily available, but as you fight that fire and progress, you would want to have in your extra resources, and that's part of what we have been working on the past week to make sure that we had available to us.
And actually, I would have the council president address some of that, because although Chief Slats couldn't make it tonight because of a prior thing, one, we've had a lot of communication and planning with Chief Slats. We've always said public safety is a priority. We're going to protect this town. But Chief Slats actually did send something to the council president in relation to that to talk about, just in case anyone had a question regarding that.
Yeah, I reached directly out to the chief because I had the same worry and question myself, and I wanted to hear from him directly. He did send a very nice email follow-up ensuring me that they were in constant communication on that.
Excellent, thank you. Next question was about moratorium, which everyone's been talking about. I'm not going to discuss the MBTA Communities Act. My question is a little bit different. Right now, we've publicly stated that we're not going to allow any more additional tie-ins to water. Isn't that a de facto moratorium?
That's exactly what we've been trying to navigate, and it's been very difficult. It's been very difficult. At this point, I think we've tried to navigate working collaboratively with the state. The council has been working on this. I think fairly soon we'll have some further conversation about it. It's been a difficult situation to navigate, but technically, for new projects, yes.
So as far as the numbers go for 10A, 10B, bringing back online, assuming Middleborough was no longer a connection since they don't seem to be proactively going to be supplying us with more water, for the ones that have already been approved, have you factored those into the future numbers to see if we're in a water deficit?
That can't officially be established until the project or the place comes online officially, as things will change in that project wise of what their appliances, mixed-use buildings. We don't know if the mixed-use buildings will change. That will come within time, but we take the calculations based off of the reports that Apex has given us.
Right, so you've gotten these reports that state that these pre-existing, already approved situations of buildings that are being built right now are going to draw X amount of gallons per day. Do those exceed, should we bring on 10B and or 10A, and will they come online prior to August and September when 10A and 10B can be brought on?
Those projects will not be coming online prior to, but that is also why we are looking to advance our projects fourfold with the development of Vernon Street. And the other thing is we are getting to the spot to get to the next level, and that's what we're working on right now.
Okay, so the question still stands. If 10A, 10B come on, along with all of the pre-approved, non-de facto moratorium properties, the ones that have already been approved, does that water exceed our supply even with 10A and 10B?
No, so the current projects that are actually under construction, they will, period, not be online until 10A and 10B are activated. And once 10A and 10B are activated, say for example, like that project on Broad Street that is pre-approved and looked at, right? That is going to be using around 30,000 gallons a day. So that will be well accommodated by the addition of 10A and 10B. And remember now, 10B alone, once it comes on after being filtered and treated, will offset what we're already getting as a supplement. Remember, the supplement that we're getting from Middleborough is going on right now without the availability of 10B. And so once 10B comes on, that will offset what we have from Middleborough. And then we'll have 10A, which has not been on at all. That'll be additional water. So between those two, we'll be looking at about 500,000 gallons a day.
Let me add this because, one, Bill can attest to this. I've been watching our water tanks on a daily basis in the morning and the afternoons. And believe me, I've learned a lot about water during my time here. But I think this is the clearest way to understand this a little bit. Our water usage and our water tanks really depend on usage. And so at periods of time, obviously the hotter it gets, more usage. I think naturally we said more showers, people are utilizing more water. So you may have some deficits. This is happening in a lot of communities. We saw Hanson mention historically low water tanks. A lot of communities, East Bridgewater, West Bridgewater, all of our communities are in a similar situation. But what happens at times is sometimes that demand is lower than our supply. And so, for example, these past few days, even though this is generally the period where we have the most demand because it's warmer, our water takes have actually increased. And so what we say is part of this work, particularly in the winter, at one point during the winter, when we were taking our wells offline, we were redeveloping. Our water tanks were at 70 feet at one point. And we were able to do redevelopment work, et cetera. I think when we get 10A and 10B on, one, we can increase our water tanks, especially during the fall and winter time. We can redevelop our wells, kind of what we did now. Hopefully, what redevelopment and proper maintenance of our system, we can rest our wells too. So one, we can see some capacity. Hopefully, we continue praying for some more water and we get out of this drought. But these are the things that will put us in a better position moving forward. So then naturally, when we do come back to the summer period where demand is higher, we're approaching it from a different phase. Water tanks that are filled, wells that hopefully have been able to rest, be redeveloped. So when we come in the summer where demand is higher, once again, higher water tanks, more capacity addressed, and we'll be able to better navigate that. That it hasn't been where we've been, but once again, I go back to the chart. How we've navigated this is by turning 10B on all the time, every year, 50% of the time, and we navigated it. The difference is this year is we're trying to navigate not turning 10B on. Because if I turn 10B on today, or a bill turned 10B on today, our water tanks are going to increase significantly. Like I said, just these past few days, our water tanks have increased. So it would increase significantly. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to introduce that water that is unfiltered, and that's where we had a lot of that brown water complaints. We have significantly reduced that because we're not introducing that into the system.
So
hopefully that explains a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. So let me just recap. So what we're saying is, right now, we're hoping that the Middleborough will actually extend their water supply to us. In the process, 10B and 10A will eventually get cleaned up by August, September, and you'll let us know if any delays happen in that. After that point, we should be self-sufficient as a town to actually have our own water supply to include all of the current developments that are going on, the individual houses, everything that's been pre-approved before December, and including the one that was done on December 22nd.
So yes, we will navigate that. So yes to all those questions that you said there. But I do want to put this caveat in here is I think this town has sort of grappled with, one, funding, trying to get how they've operated, and this is my review of this process, is they want to add more development to help offset new growth, add to our budget, but also to help pay for some of our infrastructure issues that we've had in place. They haven't wanted users to pay, the burden of that. And so we've continued to add development, but our infrastructure and our maintenance of that infrastructure system has not been where it needs to be. So what I would say is this is why we are focusing on those alternative water sources. That's very important for people to hear. So it's not just getting 10A and 10B online, you gotta do the other work that we've talked about. The Vernon Street wells are absolutely a priority. We've talked about being self-reliant as possible, investing in our infrastructure. That's why we wanna do that. That adds resiliency to our water supply. We can rest our wells properly. We've talked about Brockton potentially. That's another opportunity. That's 1 million gallons of water potentially. Think this through a little bit. If our demand is 1.7 right now, but in the winter it's significantly lower, where about winter are we, Bill?
1.2?
$1.2 million. So you can almost offset your entire water demand during the winter. What can we do for our infrastructure? We can rest our wells completely, we can redevelop, and we can be in a good position for the summer months when we need them a little bit more to navigate that. But then, that doesn't stop there. Let's look at those alternative water sites and those properties that may be available for us. That's being strategic. That's thinking not only about today, it's thinking about tomorrow, because we should have those opportunities. We should look at those things. So it's a threefold process. We got to add alternative water sources too.
Perfect. I want to thank everybody for coming in tonight. I know it's a Tuesday night. You didn't have to be here. So thank you all very much.
Take another question from the residents here, and then I'm going to answer a question from the sheet.
Steph D'Amelia, Harvest Lane. Is flushing an option in the winter months?
It is, depending on the winter. This winter was a harsh winter. We had many nights of cold weather and a ton of snow. It's not available, and I'm pretty sure the highway superintendent would not be a fan of that. But in the winter months, when we do have nice days or nice weeks of weather, we would love to go out and flush. That's the most easiest time and when the demand is the lowest. So that's ideally when we would like to flush, but it depends most certainly on the weather and our timing and operational staff.
But it's normally not standard procedure?
No.
Okay. I'm going to direct this to either you, Billy, or Azu, and even the town manager. Do either of you or any of you think that Mr. Andrews has a viable piece of property that would help us with our water situation?
There's a lot of work that needs to go into that.
But that doesn't matter, but is it possible that he has a piece of property that would be a viable water source?
There's a possibility for a variety of properties of doing that, so they absolutely have to.
But that one's on the table. Is it possible that it's a viable water source?
So
Bill, you worked at Middleborough.
You wouldn't know until you evaluate that, so
Okay,
it's possible.
you worked in Middleborough. It's within a very short distance of the Mazaris well that's pumping us 400,000.
I can't answer that because
I can.
We have wells on the same property that have different water qualities.
And so there's a chance that Mr. Andrews' property is worthless.
I can't answer that.
Well, why don't we find out? That's one of the things that
That's
kind
part
of,
of the work that we're doing. We do need to find out.
that shouldn't take that long. So Mr. Norris mentioned about fire. Have our water towers been in a situation where it was in dire straits, where it would affect the safety of any of our first responders in the last 3 months?
Have our water tanks been in a dire situation that would have affected the safety of our first responders?
The levels.
No, if they were, we would turn 10B on.
They've never been in dire straits, we're below 20 feet or so.
Well, dire straits could be considered something completely different. You've had water tanks that have gone below 20 feet at a point, but one, we felt like we could navigate that without turning 10B on. But if we ever were concerned about that, by the way, it's also been communicated with the Chief Slats, and we had a plan regarding that in terms of our tanker program that we had there, we would turn 10B on. We would turn 10B on.
Okay, so tonight, Bill, you checked the box, correct?
Yes.
On the 21st of December, December 21st, 2025. And on December 23rd, you were asked by a member of the town, is there a water impact report being done before the box gets checked? And you said yes.
I don't remember that process exactly as you said that. But let's say that occurred. I do remember the conversation about a water impact study, that even though that project was approved, we were going to have a water impact study on it. And we made that commitment, and we have a water impact study.
So a project can be approved, but a permit doesn't get issued until all the boxes are checked, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's an approved project,
Nope.
but no building permit can be issued until all the boxes are checked, correct?
Correct?
So on the 21st, the box was checked for water.
Yep.
17 days after a water emergency was declared. On the 23rd, you were asked if there was a water impact report being done, and you said, yes, it's in the process of it now through Apex. And on the 31st of December, a permit was issued. Is that correct?
It sounds about right, yeah.
Okay.
But
So-
I would also, once again, I'm going to keep reiterating what we said before.
You could but
in terms
why
of-
didn't you
hold
just
on,
say?
let me just finish
no,
what I was going to say.
Billy, you
In
could have
ter-
said the
in
box
ter-
is checked,
sir,
you don't need a water
let
impact
me-
report, if the box is already checked.
Let me finish what I was
This
going
could
to
have been
say.
done a long time ago.
I'm going to finish what I said. We are not operating with a building moratorium or water
I
moratorium.
didn't mention anything about a
Yeah,
moratorium. I
so
didn't
in
mention
terms of
a-
that,
I
we
mentioned a
said
water
we did-
emergency.
We did exactly
Which
what
has
we
an
said
effect
we're
on the
operating.
safety of the public.
We're doing exactly what we said we were going to do in that situation. We've been very transparent about that.
Not really. We asked 100 times who checked the box, and nobody would answer.
We did answer it.
No, you didn't.
We did answer it. We had the building
Not until the
inspector. I'm
building
not going to argue.
commissioner.
Our building
I'm
commissioner.
not arguing,
expla-
I'm asking.
Our building
I'm a member of
commissioner-
the public. I'm a taxpayer. I'm asking
Our building
questions.
commissioner came to a meeting. Our building commissioner came to a meeting and outlined exactly how building permits get issued.
I just repeated it. So we went for how long without that question being answered? Box
I feel like
checked.
we answered it.
Water impact is in the process on the 23rd. Permit issued on the 31st. Water impact report comes back in February. And the last paragraph of the water report is pretty significant. So that was all for nothing, all of it. Wasted a lot of time. In January, we negotiated with Middleborough for 250,000 gallons a day. Correct?
We had a conversation with Middleborough about water, yes.
And it was 250,000 gallons a day.
They made it very clear that it would ebb and flow as their demand needed, yeah.
And our demand needed more, so thankfully, there was someone over there that was dialing it up when we needed it. Up over 350 at times, even up to 400. Is that fair to say?
No, it's
350? 350.
350, yeah.
Okay, 350. Well, let's call it 350. Has it ever gone below 250?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, last Sunday it did. That's part of why we had the notice go out, yeah.
And did you call to ask for them to turn it back up?
Over the course of the last week, yes.
Yeah, so from 250 to 150, they dropped 100,000 gallons, and you had to get on the phone and call, hey, we need more water. Is that fair to say? Okay.
Once again, that is a logical process.
100,000 gallons, and you have to call an emergency, hey, we need more water.
No, I understand. That's working in collaboration with our partners because of what we're trying to do here. And that's the most important thing. Now, if they were unable to provide that water, once again, we have to protect this town, and we're going to do what's best for public safety. We would have turned 10B on. They're good partners. We navigated that. Our tanks have increased since that period. So that's part of this process and that we're trying to work to navigate. But yes, they're absolutely great partners. Yep, they're absolutely great partners. Yep.
Hi, Lincoln Andrews, Stiles and Hart. I feel like a lot of things have been mischaracterized, but I'm going to pass alongside of that, and I'm going to give you all the best piece of advice that you're going to get. The chances of Bridgewater getting a water extension from Middleborough with just Town Council President Murphy showing up without the DPW is close to zero. I would highly recommend that you all attend if you want to ensure or hope to get the continuance of a water extension. Thank you.
I'm gonna go to a question that was submitted in advance. So, I heard what he said, yeah. No, guys, I heard him. He thinks the best chance that we have is by having attendance at the meeting. I heard him.
I think that's what I said to you, is that people mistake it, and you
Yeah. Yeah.
This is what I was trying to tell
I'm being cognizant of that. I apologize for that. I'm cognizant of that. I wanted to address this question because we are at 8:30, and I want to still try to get some more questions from the public.
The
So I
turning of
want-
your, the turning of your
so I want
back,
to acknowledge.
sir.
I
is in-
apologize.
is indicative of the way you have been treating my lawyers.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to say, once again, I have been involved in Middleborough Water for 32 years. Bridgewater is currently literally getting water underneath the charter change that I wrote and I authored. Mr. Young, do you recall the audit that I did on the Middleborough DPW and the Middleborough Water Department last October?
I don't recall.
You don't? Okay, well, it was a big deal. I'm surprised that you didn't. Basically, what happened was that our selects turned over all authority to a charter commission to see if our DPW and our water delivery system and enterprise account system was being handled correctly. And we audited the selects as water commissioners, the DPW director, the water superintendent, the town manager, everybody abdicated their authority. I've been following this. It has to go to town meeting. I understand the process probably better than just about anybody except for 2 or 3 people. I understand how Middleborough people think. I am telling you that your chances of getting an extension of water to Middleborough on July 6th or whatever it is, without you being present, Town Manager Casanova Davis, is close to 0.
Okay, thank you. So I'm cognizant of the time. I still want to try to address some more questions. If there is anybody here who hasn't asked a question, that wants to ask a question, please come up to the mic. I want to address that. I'm going to address a question that was submitted in advance. Has the town evaluated whether the activities subject to the ongoing Bridgewater, Raynham, Sand and Stone enforcement matter currently before the Conservation Commission may have contributed to the decline in performance of the Plymouth Street wells?
The issue with the Bridgewater sand and gravel does not, based on the water quality test that we have done, does not affect the performance of the those 2 wells. And that is also why we did the test pits and the soil borings that we did. Most of the issue with the Bridgewater sand and gravel property is superficial. Basically, it's on the surface. And that is the wetlands filling that was alleged to have occurred on that property, as well as the fill that they may have placed on the well site. That is why, again, we did those test pits. And the whatever potential, well, I cannot speak to whether they fill wetlands on their property or not, but I can attest to the fact that the wetlands filling, if it occurred, has no impact on our wells.
One more that was submitted before, relating to the work done at 10A and 10B, what are the expenditures to date for that project? Just give me an overall budget for that project too, Lori, please.
The year-to-date expenditures in that fund is $2,486,422.
And the overall project, so, Lori, can you speak into the mic a little bit? I think we had an issue hearing that.
Say it again?
Just say it again, yeah.
$2,486,422 to date.
So that's what we've expended to date. We're going to use that grant that we received, $2 million, to help offset those expenses. The overall project for this phase of completion for iron, manganese, and PFAS is about $6.1 million. Okay. Anyone else with questions that haven't asked a question yet? If they haven't, I'm going to go to you, and then I'm. No one else wants to speak? I got one more, but you can go. All right. Why don't you come up too? I want to try to get both of you. Give me one more, from there, and I'll take one from this sheet as well.
Sure. I just want to thank the town manager and the folks here giving us the extended time, over an hour. So it's been 2 hours. Some questions have been answered. Some haven't, but we'll keep going on it. Is the Apex individual here? Or did she leave?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the question?
Well, I know there was, I think Mr. D'Amelio asked a question of if the tanks were 20 feet below. And you said that didn't matter, if I understood you correctly?
That's not what I said.
Well, you said that that doesn't necessarily mean that we're in danger of not having enough fire suppression? Did I understand you correctly on that?
When he asked that question, I said, yes, the tanks had gone below 20 feet at that point. We had communicated with Chief Slats. We understood where we were at. We were monitoring that almost on an hourly basis. We ensured we were in a position to address fire suppression. If we were worried any further about the public safety of the community, we would have turned 10B on. We had that capacity to do that, and we felt we could navigate that.
Sure. So, through you, Mr. President, through Ms. Andrews? Ms. Andrews, right? Did I get the name correct?
No. Ms. Gordon.
Ms. what?
Gordon.
Gordon, I'm sorry. My apologies. My apologies. So I think it was indicated, correct me if I just want to be fair to you, Justin, so I can understand it correctly, that the tanks were around 20 feet. Can we agree to that?
Yeah.
Okay. So through Apex, correct me if I'm wrong, did it indicate that any concern around 40 feet would be considered a very dangerous level for our ability to suppress, to address our public safety concerns of not having enough water for an unfortunate event like a fire?
I'd have to look at the particular situation that was being discussed, because it really depends on.
But what's the threshold of concern for a tank to be at a level?
It's not based on the elevation of the tank, it's based on, well, it's based on the elevation of the tank and the amount of pressure that you can maintain in a system.
So in your report, did you hear Ms. Meehan Sullivan?
Yes, so if that's what we said
So
in the
20
report,
feet would
yes.
be a major concern on our tank levels. Which leads me to say this, and I apologize, Mr. Town Manager, because I didn't have the Apex report. I was expecting a podium here, but, so, Ms. Gordon, correct me if I'm understanding this, if I'm not understanding this correctly.
Can
The
you-
maximum day,
If you would mind, do you want to just tell me what?
page 25.
Thank you.
Tell me when you're ready.
Okay. Got it.
All right, so looking at this matrix, maximum day demand, this is August of 2025, 2.56 million gallons per day. Am I understanding that correct?
So this was the max day demand versus, so that was the average over the course of 2018 to 2022.
Correct.
Yes,
So I'm understanding that correctly.
yes.
All right, so the average maximum day was 2.56
So-
million gallons per day.
Right, so just to clarify, because I thought I heard you ask a different question, I just want to be sure. So all that number did was take an average of what you'd been seeing in terms of water
Sure.
use over that period of time?
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
Yep,
And then I'm just going back to what Billy and the town manager had indicated to me, that the current supply is 1.6 million, correct me if I'm wrong. The amount that we're supplying from our wells is 1.350. And Middleborough, on the highest point, is producing 350,000 gallons of water. Is that what was said, which is roughly about 1.6 million?
Not on a day, well, yeah, but not on a daily basis. And right now we're doing about 1.2 million, is what I said earlier.
Well, I'm just saying, in some months, just say you're capable of supplying 1.6 million gallons of water.
Currently,
You're
with
going-
with the Middleborough interconnection, we are
Yes.
doing 1.537 million
All right,
gallons.
well, I'm rounding up, 1.6.
Okay.
Simple math, all right? So now if 10A comes back on, understand, what's the aggregate amount between 10A and 10B through the, Mr. DPW Director? Did you say, what's the amount?
You could get up to 500,000 gallons a day.
I'm sorry?
Up to 500,000 gallons a
1,000
day.
gallons a day, okay. So pretty much, when Middleborough disappears, doesn't supply us water, we're pretty much offsetting, on a maximum day, the driest points of the season, anywhere between 600 to 900,000 gallons per day shortfall. That's a hell of a lot of deficit to make up, Mr. Casanova. And that concerns me when we don't really have any viable options in front of the council to consider right now. We have Vernon Street, which is a ways away. I'm looking at your body language. It doesn't seem like you're too excited about Lincoln Andrews option, and I don't have any horse in the race. I just want to know from the council standpoint if it's viable for us to pursue.
Yeah.
That's all we want as residents. And it seems to me that the desire to move this process forward, to find out that answer, isn't there, and that concerns me.
I would just say that I think have said that we are actually actively looking at exploring. I think we indicated how long that process may take, but you should absolutely explore that. So we're going to go down the list of looking at those alternative funding sources. And I'll reiterate kind of what we said before, that this council did pass a resolution encouraging me to look at all these sources, and that's what we're doing.
And I guess my last question, because I know this gentleman over here wants.
I'd like to.
I apologize. The water moratorium. I think State Representative Gallagher was in here a couple of months ago. He stated, not unequivocally, but he believed strongly that a water moratorium would not impact any state grant funding. It's hard for me to imagine as a resident and I hear this phrase, and I heard it again from you, Mr. Town Manager, that Bridgewater's not alone in this. Yeah, we're alone. We're in a water supply emergency. We're the only town in the Commonwealth that has a water supply, _supply emergency. And this really should be a need for a moratorium. And I can't see, when you have politics involved with the governor, the AG, the state agencies involved, when a town is in a water supply emergency, when our tanks are dangerously at low levels, we're worrying about fire protection, that any governor or any AG or any state agency without that state legislative delegation petitioning for a waiver of temporary relief, that's not an option. And I think that's a cop-out for us to go down that road and say we can't implement a water moratorium. Councilor Sabagone put something forward. It's been in the queue under review, to my understanding, through DEP and our town attorney for 8 weeks? Just about. Is that, again, it seems like there's a disconnect on that side of the room to us residents. There doesn't seem like there's an urgency there. And let me just finish up on that. Councilor President Murphy, please, I implore you, along with the town manager and the DPW director, we need that water on July 12th. You need to bring your team, listen to Lincoln Andrews, and get that extension. You just showing up, and this is just me that put a plug authorized or led a charge a decade ago to put a plug into the new science building at Bridgewater State College, because we were we saw this coming, not at this extreme event, but we understood that Bridgewater was having some water supply issues down the road, but we also had this 10A and 10B coming online with the promises of the treatment plant coming back online in 2012. But from this person and other councils and Board of Selectmen that you said to me that, what did you do? Well, we stopped development, or we advocated for stopping development and buying land. Town didn't listen to us on that because of water supply issues. And we also authorized a plug to be put in at Bridgewater State College at the Science Building until they came forward with with a MEPR or some type of mitigation that this town never received, over $250 million of expansion since the 80s. So I understand, other councilors and selectmen also understood the issues back then, but the urgency is on you, for you to act and stop pointing fingers at the past and look forward and lead for our council to address this.
Mr. Demos, I just want to say, look, I apologize if my actions at the beginning of the meeting were out of line and were taken the wrong way. It's probably frustration on my end too. So I apologize to you for that.
Fair enough.
I'm not blind to the comments that you make or what I see online, and I just hope that we can work together. That's it.
I hope you take this serious, and the issues that I brought up with
I do.
with the shortfall, we got to get moving on this, and we got to get moving on it quick.
But you and I live in this town. We have families in this town, and the only way we're going to solve this is to come together. We may not agree on everything, but we have to have conversations to meet somewhere in the middle. So I do appreciate your experience, and I want you to know that.
Thank you.
Just want to clarify, Mr. Demos is correct. And I hope that when you bring up the discussion about a water moratorium, Dennis Gallagher, the state representative, 160 South Drive, I was here before the council on April 14th, right when that new language came out about water moratoriums if a town is in a water crisis. The language is very clear. I sent it to the town manager, and I sent it to you, Mr. President, that there is a way to institute a moratorium and not affect grant money that you apply for. Now, what you said a few moments ago, Mr. Murphy, is that it sounded like grant money received prior to a moratorium might be in jeopardy, or grant money that we applied for before a moratorium is put in place may be in jeopardy. I'm not sure about that. I think the language is very clear. So when you take up the discussion at the meeting, and there was a Zoom meeting a couple weeks ago with the Executive Office of Livable Communities that you were on, it was very clear that they understand that we are in a water supply emergency. If we were to institute a water moratorium, they would certainly consider that and not jeopardize any grant monies. They're very clear about that. Now, if you just vote a carte blanche moratorium forever, yeah, that might affect it. But you already know you're going to get an extension from Middleborough. You already know you've been approved for a 6-month extension on the water supply emergency, so there's time. And I hope you have the discussion sooner than later amongst yourselves to decide whether that's something the town wants to move forward to get that issue off the table. But grant money, because we're in a water supply emergency, should not and will not affect it as long as you work with the Executive Office of Livable Communities. It's very clear, and I want that clear because I think there was a little mixed message earlier on, and I've been talking to the Executive Office of Livable Communities throughout this whole process, and I've tried to work, I am working with the town manager and everybody to do everything that I can to help the town, because we need to continue to make forward progress with this. And hopefully there'll be more forums like this, because I think this is a good way to address the citizens' questions than at a council meeting. So I just wanted to clear that up with you when you take this up whenever. You've had 5 meetings since April 14th, and nothing's been put before you to discuss it, and time is ticking. But I'm glad to see that we're going to get an additional extension with Middleborough, and I'm glad to see that the water supply emergency will be extended. While you have that time, it's time to take a break. It's time to take a step back and put a hold on certain things, in my view. But that's up to the council.
So I'm going to reiterate, once again, this council is here, but they can't speak for themselves. And I do think this has been a discussion that we've had individually, collectively. This is an opportunity for them to address that. You know, I was on that call with the Executive Housing of Livable Communities. I think they were very clear, one, that they said they're aware of Bridgewater's situation now, but they were very clear, too, about a case-by-case basis that they would evaluate that. And when we discussed moratorium, there was a little concern there navigating that. But the other thing that maybe residents don't know is there's another ordinance. Once again, appreciate that people see the ordinance that's submitted by Councilor Spigot, but we've had several iterations of ordinances, and the Attorney General's office gave specific feedback regarding another ordinance that a councilor did. So we're trying to navigate that, but I absolutely agree with you, and I don't want to speak for the council. I think the council will speak with that. But there is absolute agreement that we have to protect our town. We've got to advocate for our town, and if we need to stop building at this point and get ourselves situated, maybe that's something to be considered. So we're trying to navigate that.
Yeah, first I was how upset I am that I was cut in line by this gentleman, but he left before I could say anything. No, I'm just kidding. So my question is for just the DPW and Water Department. So I understand a little bit more. You said wells 10A and 10B will be coming online and serving us roughly 500,000 gallons, right? Is that right, a day?
That is correct.
Okay. So, and I'm assuming 10A isn't on now because it provides the same problems with the water that 10B does? It has the same contaminants, is that true?
Yeah, 10A has actually not been on for more than 10 years.
Okay,
Yeah,
but you
it
know
will
it's
be
working right now?
It has the water, and then once we have the iron and manganese filtration on,
Yes.
that both will come on.
Okay, so that 10A does have that same, it's the same water supply essentially, so it has that problem you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Say high, when we say issue, it's that basin that we're pulling from.
It's the
just for
same
this
contamination.
High
Yeah.
in iron and manganese. That's the
Right.
aquifer that we're pulling
Okay.
from.
So the manganese and iron filtration that comes online hopefully in the next 2 weeks, that's really good news. I don't know the specifics of, or how the engineering works, but I'm assuming that's, you get the water out, the contaminants out, but as far as PFAS, it's a little different, is it not? Do we lose some of that 500,000 gallons because of the PFAS? Because I know in reverse osmosis systems, it can be a 2-to-1 ratio even, it can be 3-to-1 ratio of what you might lose. Are we still projected to get that 500 when PFAS comes online?
I think Helen Azu.
Go ahead. Go, sir.
So that is the capacity of the wells themselves that can.
The
we can-
500,000.
Right, right. We won't lose any water in the treatment process, so we should still be able to produce that amount of water through the treatment process. The difference is in the actual media that's filtrating.
So we don't lose any water when we do PFAS filtering?
Not in this particular case, because it's not reverse osmosis.
Okay, that's great, that's good news.
Yes, so
Yeah,
it's
thank
going
you.
through media, and then it flows through, for the iron and manganese, the media is called green sand, and it's a sand in a combination, and that's treated. And then for the PFAS, we're using the granular activated carbon, which is an accepted process media to utilize for removal of PFAS.
Okay, and I'm assuming there's costs associated with that. We'll have to absorb those costs of removing the contaminated carbon and replacing all that, and,
That's right, there's a life expectancy of that
Right.
media.
but that's,
That would
okay.
be a part of our water enterprise budget. The overall
Okay.
project is what I mentioned before, is $6.1 million for this phase of it. But you're right, those expenses would be part of our overall water
In the budget, okay,
enterprise
I just want to make
budget.
sure that's, okay, good. I don't really have any more questions, but I would like to just mention 2 quick things. One is, I really appreciate your apology just then. That's something that some people sitting and some people standing here should take note of that and maybe try that. That goes a long way. It does. Thank you. And then I just want to mention one citizen that's kind of, we all know who she is. She created a page for the most of us citizens that don't know what's happening behind the scenes, and we've become more informed. Not going to say who it is. She may want to remain anonymous, but I want to thank her for her work.
All right, it's 8:50. Is there anyone else that has a question? Most of the questions that are on this sheet, I didn't go through all of them, but some of them we addressed during the presentation. So I think we've addressed most of the questions there. Is there anyone else here in attendance that has a question that feels like they want to ask it? I want to take advantage of that opportunity.
I don't want to ask a question, I just want to state something for the record. If the residents that are here, we're all counselors, there are 9 of us that were elected by the people, and I will just state that I do not like the way this format happened tonight. I don't want people to think that we don't care. We wanted to listen to everything with them, but the way the government is structured here makes it very hard for us as counselors to do our job, okay? I expressed my frustration to the council president in an email and to the town manager, and I just want to let the residents know that I hear them, I'm listening to them, and I'll ask my questions at the council. But I was told by somebody that it wouldn't be efficient for us to speak tonight. I just don't think that's the right way to go. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. I want to close on, I want to thank all of you for being in attendance. I want to thank, obviously, our team. I think the message that I'm going to reiterate here is there's a lot of work to be done. Significant progress has been made in these months, and we understand the frustration, we understand the concern. My commitment to you, and I can't speak for the council can have their own forums, they can do their own individual things, and collaboratively. That's why I asked Council President to be a part of this. We'll have more forums. We'll continue to try to be transparent and have patience with us. We're going to navigate. We're almost there, especially in the iron and manganese. I want people to be very clear about that. That commitment I take very seriously to try to navigate without turning that well back on unless necessary. And we're very close. Like I said, I think our expectation is mid-July to being able to activate that. So obviously that's a big difference for our town. For 10 years we've been operating this way. I made a commitment to do something differently. I know this council stands with me in doing it differently. And so we're going to get there, and we're going to continue the work that we need to do. Okay? Thank you for coming out. We appreciate you. Have a good evening.